Good Wednesday evening to you from our studios in Caracas, Venezuela. My name is Reagan Devines. We begin with the headlines. A new constitution based on democracy and public opinion. Chile's president closes in on an election promise. Venezuela's Nicolas Maduro makes a stern warning against detractors ahead of December's elections. And a soft coup attempt takes a pause as Brazil's president stands up against the opposition. The details on these stories and more right now on From the South. Thank you so much for being here with us. Chilean President Michelle Bachelet has announced the beginning of the process to write a new constitution. The current one dates back to Augusto Pinochet's dictatorship. It has been slightly amended since the return to democracy, but the president says that a new and better constitution, born in a true democracy and representing the popular will, is needed. This was one of Bachelet's key electoral pledges. The proposal must now be discussed through March of next year. However, Bachelet would be out of office by the time the new constitution is voted upon.
The current constitution originated during the dictatorship. It doesn't address the needs of our time, nor does it favor democracy. It was imposed by a few on the majority. Because of that, it was created without legitimacy and hasn't been accepted by citizens as their own. It's true that since the return of democracy, we've made important changes that have weakened its authoritarian character. But it still contains mechanisms that obstruct the full exercise of democracy and that cannot be eliminated with new partial attempts. For these reasons, the time has come to change.
Bolivian President Evo Morales said that Chile does not have a leg to stand on over access to the Pacific Ocean with Bolivia. Last month, the International Court of Justice ruled that it does have jurisdiction to hear Bolivia's case. Morales added that the dispute originated from oligarchies.
I'm convinced this is not a problem of the people of Chile or Bolivia, but one of the oligarchies, the English transnationals, who due to economic reasons have invaded us. They will say there was no invasion and we solved this with a treaty. But why don't they review the 1866 treaty, which recognizes access to the sea? The 25-24 parallels are handled, I think. I'm no expert, but the second treaty of 1874 and under imposition, threats, the Treaty of 1904, an imposed, unjust and breached treaty above all else.
President Morales also spoke about the drop in resource prices and said that it will not damage the country. He spoke at the 6th annual meeting with Bolivian ambassadors across the world.
I want to tell you that this year we will get $2.5 less billion from hydrocarbon and $700 to $750 million from mining. The state will receive $3 billion less because of the international price of natural resources. You, as ambassadors and consuls, know very well the effects and the causes of this. I am convinced that sometimes, when the capitalist system has a crisis, it transfers it to the developing countries, and this impacts on us.
Venezuela's President Nicolas Maduro warned of possible destabilization plans ahead of the legislative elections in December. He said that anyone who attempts to sabotage the process will face prison.
Todo el que sea candidato o candidata, resulte electo o no.
Whatever candidate is elected or not, and incorporates a violent plan of instructional blockades against the electoral results and against the life of the country on December 6th, the only thing they can expect is jail, is justice. I'm not going to hesitate to have these people captured, whoever they are, whatever surname they have. Everyone know that. All of those that want to play both sides, go to the elections to bring together forces to destroy the country. They won't do it in the name of the majority of the country that wants peace.
Haiti and the Dominican Republic have agreed to return their ambassadors and restart overland trade between the two countries. Relations between the two neighbors deteriorated sharply in July after the government in Santo Domingo clamped down on thousands of Haitian descendants who were never able to obtain identity papers in the Dominican Republic. Presidents Michel Martelly and Danilo Medina reached the agreements at their first official meeting since last year. Over 200,000 Hondurans have been deprived of their savings after the closing of the country's Continental Bank last week. However, authorities assure that repayment is guaranteed to those with less than $10,000. The Continental Group is accused of money laundering and having links with the Sinaloa drug cartel, as well as with the fugitive El Chapo, who escaped from a Mexican prison back in July. The National Commission of Banks and Insurance asked for calm, but out of the 220,000 clients, only half of them, those with accounts lower than $10,000, will be getting their money. The over 11,000 workers have appealed for legal protection. In Argentina, a Senate commission released its expectations for the following year. Increased growth is expected, and over 60% of the budget will go towards social spending.
We foresee a 3% growth for next year. We are closing with a growth rate of 2.3%. We are thinking of an inflation of about 14 or 16%. We are talking about a total budget of almost 1.8 trillion pesos. It is good to say that an important part of the budget, over 60%, will go to social spending.
And staying in Argentina, a trans rights activist was found dead in her home under suspicious circumstances. Diana Sakayan was the leader of an international lesbian, gay, and bisexual organization. The door to her house was damaged from the inside, leading authorities to think that the crime happened in her house. The LGBTI community in Argentina has said that the crime should be considered a hate crime. Brazilian President Dilma Rousseff says that she will stand up to opposition attempts to remove her from office. This after the leader of the lower house, Eduardo Cunha, delayed taking a decision about opening impeachment proceedings against Rousseff. Should the proceedings be approved, the impeachment would go to a commission including representatives from all parties before being submitted to a vote in the lower house requiring a 2/3 majority. At a trade union conference alongside former leader Lula da Silva, Rousseff accused the opposition of a soft coup.
The obsession of those who have tasted defeat in the polls to destroy the mandate of an elected president against which there is no charge of any kind of crime. I tell you, we will not let this obsession prosper more.
Dilma has only 3 years and 3 months in charge. She still has time to do all that she's been promised during her campaign.
More on the Ayotzinapa case in Mexico. The country's Human Rights Commission has now said that there was a 6th disappeared bus that was not investigated by the government. The Inter-American Commission for Human Rights had previously revealed the existence of a 5th bus that was not even mentioned in the government's investigation, despite it having been detained by federal police on the night of the incident. This 5th bus was supposedly carrying drugs. Now the Human Rights Commission speaks of a 6th bus, although it has not yet given further details. And coming up after the break, Russian air forces continue to attack terrorist positions in Syria, while the Syrian ground forces come under heavy attack. This story and more next.
Wherever the news, you'll be there.
Rod stars G1 and Claudia de la Cruz are Rebel Diaz, hip-hop activists positioned within a history of political resistance through music. And you don't stop. They invite young people to express themselves about their social struggles. And you don't stop. Watch it on telesurtv.net/English. Telesur, wherever the news, you'll be there. Caracas, Havana, Mexico, Quito, Washington, wherever the newsmakers will be there. Watch on telesurtv.net/English. Telesur, wherever the news, you'll be there.
Thanks for sticking with us. The first Democratic primary debate in the United States took place on Tuesday night, shining light upon issues such as gun control, the power of big companies, and foreign policy. However, some important issues such as immigration and police brutality were only briefly discussed. Bianca Perez reports from Washington.
During the first Democratic primary debate, which lasted about 2 hours, Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton were able to shine, leaving the other three contenders, Jim Webb, Lincoln Chafee, and Martin O'Malley, far behind. Some experts believe that a lack of preparation hurt these three candidates most, leaving the field open for the two frontrunners.
Yesterday, we expected Sanders to be more confrontational with Hillary, and that wasn't the case, and she was very cautious on how she approached him when she had to criticize him on certain ideas. She was very cautious because she understands that the group of people that he represents, in this case, more of the leftist, far leftist side of the Democratic Party, is with him, and she doesn't want to alienate those voters.
A college degree today, Dana, is the equivalent.
Senator Sanders stuck to his platform as he demonstrated his liberal views throughout the night, speaking of issues that appeal to younger generations and social movements. His often controversial statements have led him to become one of the front runners as he has established himself as a candidate of the people.
I am seeing in this country too many lives being destroyed for nonviolent offenses. We have a criminal justice system that lets CEOs on Wall Street walk away, and yet we are imprisoning or giving jail sentences to young people who are smoking marijuana. I think we have to think through this war on drugs. Black Lives Matter.
One of the most controversial topics, which was only briefly spoken about, was the Black Lives Matter movement, on which all candidates agreed a structural reform of the criminal justice system is necessary.
We need to tackle mass incarceration, and this may be the only bipartisan issue in the Congress this year. We actually have people on both sides of the aisle who have reached the same conclusion, that we cannot keep imprisoning more people than anybody else in the world.
Citizens overall felt that the debate was more successful than the GOP debates that have occurred thus far. Some also felt that the lack of diversity in the candidates left out many important topics that could have been addressed more in depth.
This wasn't a debate. It was a brawl like the two Republican debates. This was more even-handed, and I thought it was incredibly thoughtful and substantive across the board.
The next Democratic debate is scheduled to take place on November 14th at Drake University in Des Moines, Iowa. Bianca Perez, Telesur, Washington, D.C.
New video uploaded online claims to show Syrian rebel Nasser army fighters attacking government barracks. The video is said to have been shot in Kafran Boudet town in Syria's northern province. Meanwhile, Russian officials continue to bomb rebel targets as they work with Syria's government to not only oust Islamic State but also other opposition forces that are against the government of President Bashar al-Assad. Russian aircraft have carried out 88 airstrikes in Syria in the last 24 hours. The Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has also said that Russia wanted to cooperate with other countries in order to resolve the Syrian crisis. Hazem Abdullah reports from Damascus.
With the Russian intervention in Syria into the third week, the last 24 hours saw raids against 86 extremist targets in the role of Idlib, Hama, Raqqa, Latakia and Aleppo. More than 50 Russian warplanes and helicopters are taking part.
During the last 24 hours, the aircraft carried out 88 raids against terrorists in the province of Raqqa and Hama, Idlib and Latakia and Aleppo, where the raids targeted command centers and ammunition stores, as well as plants for the production of explosives and camps for training terrorists.
The Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, speaking before the Russian Parliament or Duma, said that Russia is interested in practical cooperation with Saudi Arabia and Turkey and other countries in the region in order to resolve the Syrian crisis. He added, "We are ready to cooperate very closely with all countries, including the countries that face the terrorist threat directly."
Russian airstrikes and the clear progress of Syrian troops on the ground has changed the balance of forces, in particular with Turkey and Saudi Arabia, which have been providing support to terrorists. Now we see terrorists fleeing to take refuge in Turkey, and Erdogan is seeking to set up a barrier.
Turkey, which has begun to see the collapse of its project in Syria through the rapid progress of the Syrian army backed by Russian jets, has now deployed a ground force backed by tanks to take over 100 square meters in the northern province of Idlib, under the pretext of sitting up above Azul. Hazem Abdullah, Telesource, Syria.
Another Palestinian has been shot dead after an attempt at stabbing an Israeli officer. The death toll after the past 2 weeks of violence is now at 38, 7 Israelis and 31 Palestinians. Many believe the violence began after Palestinians suspected that the Israeli government was attempting to exercise control over the Al-Aqsa Mosque, a holy site for both Muslims and Jews. Israeli authorities have, however, denied the accusation. And after a Security Council meeting organized by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, Israel has stripped the residency status of some Palestinians who they believe took part in the protest action. They have also decided to ease firearms laws for Israelis. Many have been taking to social media empathizing with Palestinians who by all accounts have not been receiving fair representation from the media. Palestine's president said that his people will, however, continue to fight.
We will continue our struggle, a legitimate national struggle, that is based on our right to defend our existence through a peaceful and popular struggle and a political and legal battle.
The organization, the International Humanitarian Fact-Finding Commission, on request by the aid group Doctors Without Borders, says it is prepared to move ahead with the investigation on the Kunduz hospital bombing. Earlier this month, on October 3rd, the hospital was bombed by the United States, killing 22 people. The U.S. apologized for the strike, referring to it as a mistake. All that stands now before the investigation can begin, though, is the approval of both U.S. and Afghan authorities.
What is very important is that the International Humanitarian Fact-Finding Commission has been activated to start an investigation on the horrible attack in Kunduz. So this is a very important first step, and now we need the agreement of the United States and Afghan government to have this investigation started. And this is a very important step to find out more facts about the horrible attack in Kunduz on the MSF hospital.
The British Prime Minister David Cameron has called on opposition Labour Party representatives to vote against their newly elected leader Jeremy Corbyn. Cameron wants them to support a Conservative proposal for more austerity, hoping to start a rift between the more moderate sector of the Labour Party and its left faction. Opposition finance spokesperson John McDonnell said that Labour should oppose the bill, saying it will result in more cuts.
Economic growth, we should be having a surplus rather than a deficit.
Some of the suspects from Turkey's suicide bombing that killed 97 people in Ankara last week could be linked to the Islamic State. That's according to Prime Minister Ahmed Davutoglu. The Prime Minister has drawn criticism for failing to prevent the twin suicide bombings on the pro-Kurdish march last Saturday. He added that the deepening investigation would look into Twitter messages as well as other online activity leading up to the attack.
Before completing all these investigations, it is difficult to say just certain the result of this investigation, because the investigation is continuing. But there are certain internet connections as well as Twitter messages calling people or informing that such an attack would be happening in Ankara before the meeting, before the rally.
The leader of the CHP, Turkey's main opposition party, called on the Justice and Interior Ministers on Sunday to resign after 97 people were killed in a twin suicide bomb attack in Ankara. The party will propose that victims are recognized as martyrs in a bid to provide support for their families left behind. Over 100 people had lost their limbs during the attack, and the CHP believes that the state should protect persons who have become disabled and have difficulty in obtaining prosthetics as well. After Dutch investigators revealed their findings on the crash of Malaysian Airlines flight MH17 earlier this week, saying that Russian missiles shot the plane out of the sky, Russia's Federal Air Transport Agency have spoken out denouncing those findings.
We looked at the final report, and in all seriousness, I can say that the Commission of the Russian Federation absolutely does not agree with the conclusion made in the final report. They are completely wrong. The lack of logic in the report is just off the scale.
And now we have a brief look for you at other stories making news around the world.
Pauline Kavaki, a nurse who was thought to have recovered after a battle with the Ebola virus last year, is currently in isolation in London after the virus re-emerged in her system. She is being treated at the Royal Free Hospital. No further details of deterioration yet have been released. A new proposed amendment on existing laws on prostitution had sex workers protesting at France's Senate. The amendment seeks to fine clients for accepting the service of sex workers. Sex workers protested the government's responsibility is right to protect sex workers, not to punish them. EU members have insisted that not enough is being done to manage the refugee influx into the region. Greece continues to receive a consistent flow of refugees onto its islands. Some believe a non-technocratic approach is needed to identify which of those seeking refuge. Others demand that war in Syria must come to an end, as well as other US-led operations in countries from which nationals are leaving. And India's pharmacists are protesting against a proposal by the government to permit the online sale of medicine. Protesters argue that the move will take much-needed business away from small businesses across the country.
India is a very big country, and there are more shops on the villages. They are having very small shops, and they are surviving with the small livelihoods. And if the e-pharmacy is coming, the small people and small businessmen, small chemists will not be able to survive, as they will not be able to compete with the big companies who are even the multinationals or the very, very big companies. They will have the huge funds, but our small chemists cannot have that huge fund.
FIFA presidential candidate Jordan's Prince Ali bin Al Hussein is asking that next year's February 26 elections to replace Joseph Sepp Blatter not be postponed. This after the suspensions of current President Sepp Blatter, UEFA President Michel Platini, and the 6-year ban on presidential candidate South Korea's Chung Moon-joon. Prince Ali said that FIFA needs to move beyond interim leadership and elect an accountable president.
All of you.
Who are we, what is mankind, and where are we going? These are the questions that Paris's Museum of Mankind wants to pose through its exhibit. The museum had been closed for renovations for the past 6 years, but will reopen this week, giving visitors a glimpse at some of the largest and most reputable collections of prehistoric artifacts in the world. The museum was first opened in 1938 and went through over $100 million in renovations for its reopening. And finally this evening, he is the son of the late Nigerian musician Fela Anikulapo Kuti, and he is following in his father's footsteps of providing music that seek to influence change for the better. Sion Kuti said that the music the band makes, called Afrobeat, is a weapon of political resistance against corruption and injustice. He adds that it is time for Nigeria to step up to bullies like Boko Haram.
It's not just music for dancing or love, or, you know. So my music is also out to influence people, to educate people, to inform people, so that people can take correct actions for their betterment. That's Afrobeat.
And that's how we end our newscast this evening. Please remember, there is more on these and other stories on our website, telesurtv.net/English. From our news teams in Quito, Ecuador, and right here in Caracas, Venezuela, my name is Reagan Devines. We hope to see you tomorrow. Have a great evening.